So we're going to go through and do this problem, because this is similar to what you're going to have on your homework. Okay? Very first thing what we need to do is we're going to find the domain of each of the individual functions, and then that will help us come up with that. Okay? So what's the domain of x minus 4?
Negative infinity.
Negative infinity to positive infinity. Good. What's the domain of g of x? I would highly suggest that you graph this
9 to
problem.
infinity.
I think you should graph it. I really think you should graph this one to see what the domain is going to be.
Negative 3 to positive 3. What the
Negative 3 to
heck?
positive 3. And do I include the negative 3 and the positive 3?
Yes.
Yes. And the reason why, this is how you can check it. Take negative 3, plug it right in here for x. And when you do that, you're going to get 0, and you can take the square root of 0. But for those of you that are wondering, this is what the graph is actually going to look like. It's going to look like a semicircle.
Or like an arc.
It's actually a circle with a radius of 3, and we will learn that, how you can get that from where you started with. But that's what the graph looks like. So now all we need to do is find f plus g of x. Okay, so here we go. F plus g of x. Very easy. What are we going to do? Don't everybody speak at once. What are we going to do?
Take the
X minus 4 plus 9 minus 6.
Perfect, that's it. There you go, you're done. Now we need to write the domain of that. What's the domain going to be?
negative 3 to positive 3.
Negative 3 to positive 3, because that's the intersection of the two. Good. So there we did one of them. Fairly straightforward.
Easy peasy, golden squeezy.
F minus g of x, what's going to be different?
Subtract.
Subtract. So instead of being a plus sign, you're just going to have a minus sign. What do you know about the domain? Same. Now by doing that domain work early on, you make your life much easier when you go through and solve these. F times g of x. Okay. X minus 4 times square root of 9 minus x squared. I'm not going to make you FOIL or multiply that out. Just leave it alone as it is. What can you tell me about the domain here?
2.
Same. And last but not least, f over g of x. We're just, yep, x minus 4 over this. Can you do any simplifying?
Yes. No.
Now we got some problems.
Because the
Okay.
bottom can't equal 0.
What's the problem? The bottom can't equal 0. Where does the bottom equal 0?
Negative 3.
And?
3.
So the bottom equals 0 here. So I can have any value, okay, except for, so notice here, I'm starting here, this is my original domain, okay, because that's where the intersection of the two is. However, I'm telling you right now that you cannot have negative 3 and you cannot have positive 3 because that makes the denominator 0. So what do you have to do to this pink domain?
X such that.
You have to do the parentheses.
Just do this. Because notice what that does. Gets rid of the 3 and negative 3.
Oh, goodness.
Okay? So we started off with the original domain. The original domain was this. Okay? We said that the denominator can't be 3 or negative 3 because it will be 0. So the question is, how do you get rid of the negative 3 and the positive 3? It's real easy. All we do is we make those parentheses, because then what that does is that makes those two not included. But it makes every other number within the two included. So basically what you're doing is if you use negative 3, here's negative 3. And here's positive 3. Okay, and so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and not include negative 3 So this is what we've done, is we've made it that, by putting the parentheses there.
So same thing, take
That's
bigger.
Right, it can't be bigger. Right, because if it was bigger than these two, that's gonna be a negative. And so that's why our domain on all of these was from negative 3 to positive 3. Okay, so now, we're gonna talk about composition of functions. You're gonna notice this is different. This is not multiplying. Okay, this is not multiplying. So this is something kind of different. And if you look here, it says F and then it's got a circle and G. And then G circle F. How this is read is F composed with G. How my kids used to remember this in the past is they called this the fog and Gog. Okay? Because the circle looks like an O, so you get F-O-G. The Goff is G-O-F. And so, now what we're going to do is we're going to do this composition of functions, and this is not overly difficult. What F-O-G means is it means this. Okay, now notice what I've done. I've just put the g of x in parentheses. So when I see the g composed with f of x, that means g f of x. No, we're not done yet. We're going back. So when I see this f of g2, this is f of g of 2. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through individually and go through this. Now, order of operations states you always do parentheses first. Okay. So parentheses here say g of x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put g of x right in there. So g of x is x minus 4.
That is correct.
Parentheses here say f of x is x squared plus 1.
It's true.
Next, I have g of 2. What is g of 2?
2x minus 8.
What is g of 2?
You're right, aren't you?
G of 2, I go to the g of x function, and in place of x, I'm putting
Oh,
Two.
so negative.
negative 2.
That's our truth.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through in the original problem now. This says f of x minus 4. So I'm going to take x minus 4. I'm going to go to the f of x function, which is right up here. And in place of x, I'm going to put x minus 4.
Oh.
So really,
These are
x
easy.
minus 4 quantity squared plus 1. Now what do we have to do with that x
You
minus
have
4
to
quantity
FOIL
squared?
it.
FOIL it out. Yep. So it comes out to be x squared minus
4x.
4x,
Minus 4x.
which is minus
8x.
8x, plus 16 plus 1, because I have the plus 1 right here.
That's true, you do.
So now your final answer, x squared,
Minus
8x plus 17.
And that's it.
Okay, that's all you have to do on
I
that
can
problem.
do that.
Now we're going to continue on with this one. Okay?
That was tough.
Now this says g of x squared plus 1. So that means I'm going to go to the g of x function, right up here, and I'm going to plug x squared plus 1 right there. So I get x squared plus 1, what? Minus 4, because I have the minus 4 in the original problem. Your final answer is x squared
Minus 3.
minus 3.
That's great.
The bottom one says you've got f of negative 2. So where are you going to put the negative 2?
5.
Right up here. So I end up having negative 2 quantity squared plus 1, which your answer is
5.
5. So remember again, all you're doing is you're doing parentheses first. In a way, it's like you're replacing each of these circles with a set of parentheses. That's what you're doing. Okay? All right. Do you want to look at another set?
No.
Or do you think you're good?
Unless you guys want to.
How about we do the first one?
Okay.
So remember what I said. That means you replace those with parentheses. So I have f of g of x. What do you do now?
which is
Get rid of the g of x, which is
5 minus x squared.
5 minus x squared. What do you do now?
And then you go to the f, and you plug in your 5 minus
Yep,
x
plug
squared.
5 minus x squared in here.
So
So you have 3 times 5 minus x squared.
15
I'm going to add 1.
15 minus 3x.
So you get 15 minus 3x squared plus 1. So your final answer is what?
16 minus 3x.
16 minus 3x squared. You can do that, that's fine. Okay, so that's what you do. Every problem you do the same.
Okay.
Alrighty, now what this says here is this is a little different because what we're doing is we're going backwards. Okay, I know that this is what I want to get to, but I have to somehow come up with two different functions that create that. So I have to think, okay, what would be two different functions that when I put them together, I'm going to get this. Things you notice is squared, right? So let's just say that one of those is 1 over x squared.
What if it's not?
What would the other function have to be?
1 over 4.
1 over 2. Oh, 4.
What would the other function have to be?
1 over 2.
If this is where I started, I need to put another function in here for x so that I get 1 over x plus 2 quantity squared.
1 over 4.
What'd you say, Zach?
X plus 2.
X plus 2. I'm going to get rid of parentheses now. Now let's think about what that means. Remember my original thing is to take its f of g of x like this. Right? So if I put x plus 2 down here for g of x, and I now take that x plus 2 and plug it in right here, I'm going to get 1 over x plus 2 quantity squared. It's kind of like you're having to think about going backwards. So let's look at another one here. Here we go. Let's do one with the denominator here. What should be in the denominator? Square root x minus 1. Now I need to substitute something in here in the top, so I'm going to call that x. What do you think g of x is going to be then? X plus 5, because what you need to do is plug this x plus 5 in up here, right up here at the top, and you'll get your x plus 5 over root x minus 1. It's going to be kind of difficult to see until you start getting going in the groove. Okay, if you have questions, be sure to ask. Okay, but here's your assignment. 2 through 12 the evens, 16 through 38 the evens. 2 through 12 the evens, 16